Hello everyone, so in today's video I'm going to be showing you how you can display a random image in the browser using JavaScript. So a feature of this is that every time somebody visits the page, an image is selected at random, and also the image that is currently on screen is never repeated. So there are 4 images in this random selection, and it doesn't matter how many times I click refresh, you never see the current image repeated in the next one. And I'll also show you how you can implement that using pure JavaScript. So rather than refreshing the page, when you click a button, the image is randomly selected and also never repeated. So let's take a look at how this can be implemented in code. So for the markup, I have an image element already with an ID and an alt attribute, but no src set. So I'm going to be setting the src for the image using JavaScript, and there's a button that is already there in the markup for the CSS for the image, just in case they are of different sizes. I've set width and height to 400 pixels and object fit to cover. So what this is saying is that the images should stretch to fit this 400 by 400 pixel space without the original dimensions changing relative to one another. And to center it, I've set display block and margin to auto, and I've also done the same for the button. Okay, now for the JavaScript which we are using to set the image. So I've already selected the image element in my markup in JavaScript using getElementById. I've also done the same for the button. Now for the images, you want to get the path to these in an array like I have done here, and then save a reference to that, because the way that we're going to be selecting an image to appear on the page is by setting the src of the image element, like so, to an index in that array. So for example, if I set it to index 0, so this is going to set it to the first image in the array, which is this one. If I set it to 3, so this would be image4.jpg, that's this image. So this is the way we're going to be setting the image on the page. So to select randomly, what we want to do is to generate a random number between 0 and 3 that we're going to use to select one of these images. So what I'm going to do down here is to create a new function called random image, in which we're going to be doing that. And I'm going to call random image immediately because I want it to run on page load, so that there is an image set for the image element, because recall that we didn't actually set an src for it in the markup. So the first thing to do inside this function is to generate that random number that we can use for the selection, and you can do this using Math.random. So this is an inbuilt function that's going to generate a number somewhere between 0 and 1, never exactly 0, never exactly 1, always somewhere in between at random. So to make sure it's always an integer, you can wrap Math.random in Math.floor. So whatever you pass in to Math.floor, it's going to round it down to the nearest integer. So at the moment this is always going to generate 0 because Math.floor is rounding down the result of Math.random. So to adapt it to our purposes, you can multiply Math.random by the length of the array containing the paths to the images. So the length of the array is 4, and we want an integer between 0 and 3, but that's no problem because it's never going to be exactly 4. So if it's 3.999, because we're using Math.floor, it's always going to be rounded down to a maximum integer of 3 and a minimum of 0. And because the randomly generated numbers have an equal probability of being 0.999 above each integer, they each have an equal probability of being each one of those integers when that number is rounded down. Okay, so now that we have a randomly generated index to select the array, we can use that to select one of the images instead of a hard-coded value. So we'll select from the array by the value of random index. Okay, so if we take a look at this in the browser now, you'll see that each time I refresh the page, there's a random image, but you can see this image has been selected a couple of times now. So it's possible that you end up getting the same image twice in a row. So this one just came up again twice in a row. So we need to fix that. So first of all, after the src of the image element has been set, you want to store that value of random index in local storage. So you can do that by calling local storage using the setItem method, and you want to give that a key value. So I'll say index here, and that's going to be the value of random index. So if I head over to the browser and we open DevTools and we check to see what is inside local storage, there's one item with the key index and it has the value of 2 available. And if I refresh and we have a look at local storage now, you see it's 2 again because it's the same image. Let's have a look. If it's a different image, I get index 3. So this value is available to us each time we hit refresh, and we can use that to check that the current image is not being set to the last one. So what I'm going to do here is, before I set the src of the image, I'll create an if statement, and in that if statement I want to check if this value here of random index that I'm generating with Math.random, so random index, is not the same as what's in local storage. So to retrieve the value from local storage, I use the getItem method and I enter the key value, which is index. Now, something to watch out for is that when something gets saved to local storage, if it's not in string format, it will be coerced to string format. So the value in local storage is a string, this is a number. So I want to make sure that in this comparison, I'm converting back that string to a number again, so that I'm comparing a number with a number. So if Math.random has generated a number that doesn't match the one in local storage, then I can go ahead and set the src of the image to random index, and also after that, as I was doing before, set the value of random index to be the new value under the index key in local storage. Otherwise, what I want to do, if there is a match, I want this random image function to run again. So this will end up running random image as many times as it takes until this comparison here is true, and then the image will be set and local storage will be set again. So let's test this out in the browser now. Hopefully it is working. I'm going to refresh, and as you can see, we're not seeing the same image twice anymore. It's always a new image. Now, if you want to do this without refreshing the page, the logic is identical, except instead of storing something in local storage, you don't need to do that. You can just save it in a variable. So I'm going to create a new variable here. I'll call it index, and I won't assign a value to it. Then what I'm doing here is I'm checking that random number is not the same value as index. And then down here, instead of setting the value of local storage to be random index, I'm setting the value of the index variable to random index. And instead of reloading the page on a click of the button, I'm going to run the random image function. So it's really the same logic as before, except you don't have to rely upon local storage this time, because the page isn't being refreshed. You can store the index value in a variable, and there's no page refreshing, so it won't be lost when a new image is retrieved. So let's just test that this is working here. So you see that the same image is never appearing twice in a row. So that is how you can use JavaScript to display a random image without the same one being repeated twice in a row. So I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you did, please consider hitting the like button down below. And if you'd like to see more content like this from us, don't forget you can subscribe to the channel.